Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
We're coming to you guys on a Saturday afternoon, the day after the Pistons kind of put a spanking to the Charlotte Hornets, which is pretty fun to watch. So we'll open up starting to talk about that. But hey, also, it's just kind of fun, isn't it, to be playing meaningless basketball, but yet it's meaningless in a good way, right? Like we don't have to care about whether or not the Pistons win here or lose here. It'll be nice to get to 60 wins. I'm rooting for it, but overall, like, we just get to sit back, enjoy a good team, and they tend to win. So pretty sweet.
Yeah, and it was cool, especially in that Charlotte game where it was a game that was meaningful for Charlotte. And they're now, with the loss, locked into 9 or 10 in that bottom half of the play-in tournament, and the Pistons still go out and beat them. Obviously, I think if this is the first time we've recorded since Cade Cunningham returned from injury, so I think it's an interesting time just because you want Cade to be back out there and get his sea legs back under him and just be in the right momentum, right mojo for the playoffs. But yeah, it's been really fun. I mean, they locked up the 1 seed, I believe, a day after our last episode, and there hasn't really been a reason to go out and win these games, but you smoke the Bucks at home in the last regular season home game of the season, which is awesome for all the fans and the team in general. And obviously you're not playing the best team in the world, one that doesn't have Giannis Antetokounmpo, and then you go out to Charlotte in a game that really matters for them and beat them handily. We're going to talk a lot about the playoff matchups, but that's a team that the Pistons could see. And I think our general consensus last week is Pistons Charlotte would be a great series, but the Pistons are the more talented bunch, and I think they went out and proved that last night.
Yeah, I thought it was actually really I don't want to necessarily say impactful, but it just stood out to me the way that Charlotte came out in the first quarter of that game, right off the tip. I mean, they win the tip, LaMelo Ball sprints it to the front court, right? Like, they're trying to establish their pace. You know that this means a lot to them. And they go on a little run, right? They get a little bit of distance. Detroit has to call a timeout. They started off poorly, but then they were able to get a little bit of a lead. But then Detroit did what they tend to do this season, what they have done with teams that play this up-paced kind of basketball, and that is they just kind of leaned on them a little bit. They got physical, right? They took ball into the paint, pushed them around a little bit when they were trying to move the ball on the perimeter, make them a little bit one-dimensional offensively. And lo and behold, Detroit comes out of that first quarter up 6 points, right? 36-30. And yes, that's a scoring pace that you knew the Pistons weren't likely to maintain, and that did bear true in the second half. But the fact that Charlotte came out with such fire, and the Pistons, justifiably, it didn't matter all that much to them. They didn't come out with that same level of competitiveness, but still something clicked there in that first time out that just got them to, I guess, stomp on the Hornets a little bit, even though they didn't need to. You know what I mean? Like, that would have been one where you really could have rolled over. This is a game that doesn't mean anything for Detroit. It means everything for the Hornets. They want to ensure that they could get out of that one and done situation and that risk playing the Miami Heat. And you know what? The Pistons just kind of said, nah, we'll beat you by 18. Oh, well.
Yeah, and just going down even further in the game, it was a 3-point game entering the fourth quarter, and the Pistons hold the Hornets to 10 points. They end up winning the game by 18, and I thought it was a really nice night from the supporting cast. Like, we've seen, like, Dennis Jenkins had some huge minutes at the start of the the fourth quarter, and I mean, Cade got some rest at the start of that, and that's when they really separated themselves. And I mean, he was in there, I think, halfway through the fourth quarter, but at that point, the Pistons were already hovering around a 20-point lead. So it was just an impressive win overall. Obviously, there was a little bit of juice to the game with what happened between those two teams earlier in the year, and Brandon Miller and whatever happened with Duncan Robinson. And I think the Pistons really wanted to win that game, which I think they didn't need to, but I think it's a great mindset. It's what they've had all year. We wouldn't expect anything else. So it was a really impressive win, even though it was purely cosmetic, and it's just going to help them potentially reach that 60 win total, which is just unfathomable to think of heading into this year. I thought it was one of the most impressive wins overall for the group.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, I don't know if I'd go as far as say it's like, one of the tops for me on the year, but I do agree that just the fact that they kind of, man, I don't know exactly the right words to put it in. I've seen a little bit of conversation in the live chat here about, Charlotte's not as tough as they seem to think they are, and that might be part of it. But something about that fourth quarter, and really even the second half of the third quarter, where the Pistons did expand the lead out just a little bit before Charlotte was able to pull back, it just kind of felt like the Pistons were not. I don't want to offend the Hornets. It felt like they weren't really going 100% speed, and they were just kind of holding the little brother at bay, kind of like sticking out the arm out in front of him, just like, yeah, you're getting the swipes in, and every now and then you make contact, but I'm still big brother. I can still kind of hold you around, and then when it's time to actually turn it up, when the game matters more, we'll close it out. We'll win. Like that. That's really what it felt like to me watching that game. Charlotte came out really hot. They tried to get that first punch in. The Pistons took it, and then they responded, and the rest of the game was just kind of not necessarily playing with your food, but not doing that. You know what I mean? Like, so I agree. This was a really impressive win, and I do think that this is kind of important for maybe the not as dialed in observer of the Detroit Pistons, perhaps on the national stage, to like just recognize this whole idea that maybe the Hornets are an exceptionally difficult out for this Pistons in round one. Like, the Hornets are a tough out because they're a good team. I don't think that they necessarily are posing any significant matchup issues for Detroit. And this game really, to me, just kind of showed that. Like, Pistons are a better team. Charlotte's a good team, though, so it's going to be a difficult series if that's how it plays out. It's nothing more than that to me.
Yeah, and Charlotte heading into the game, I believe it was they won 9 of their last 12, and they've been one of the best teams in the NBA since the All-Star break, since they started. I think they got their win streak up to like 11 games at one point. Of course, there's the Atlanta Hawks out there, who were also one of the hottest teams in the NBA, who have cooled off a bit since, but are still in really good form themselves. But I just think it says something where this was truly a super important game for Charlotte, and the Pistons didn't let them off easy, which they could have. I think it might have been a different story if Cade wasn't just right back from injury and wanted to give him some extra rest before the playoffs. But still, even with that context in mind, like, it's just a super, super impressive win and strong performances across the board, even though it wasn't Cade's like biggest offensive night you'll ever see. Like, Jalen Duren led the team with 20 points. You had a night. Ron Holland has been good over the last couple of games, and just I thought it was an even performance overall. And yeah, like Richard said in the chat, I think the defense has been the story for this team all year, and in the Charlotte game specifically, they turned it up defensively a notch in the fourth quarter, which help them secure this one and keep the 60 win dream alive.
Yeah, and I'll just say too, like with the 3-point shooting element of this game, the Pistons forced the Hornets into 47 3-point attempts. The difference, this is an 18-point game, so Charlotte would have needed to have made, I believe, 8 more threes in order to just tie the score, right? Just doing that basic math. If you look at that, that's going to push their percentage up over 40% as a team, getting close to 50, so like in the mid 40s. Which is actually, you might say, oh, well, they're a good 3-point shooting team. No. They shoot 38% as a team on the year on less volume as well. So I just, again, it was a good game. It was a fun one to watch, a lot of back and forth. Pistons keep their 60-win dream alive, which is great. I'm excited for that. I think they've got a good shot at it here. Obviously, the Pacers aren't the most formidable opponent at this point in time. So maybe getting to 60 wins, you might even say, is likely if you knock on wood. And that'll be really great for Detroit. Maybe we can, here for a second, just talk about the meaning of that. But, overall, it was a fun game to watch. I think I'd even stop short of saying this was a message to the Hornets. I think this is more of a message nationally that, there is a class difference here between these two teams. Not that Charlotte's not good. They are. They're a fun team. They're very good. But I'm just going to hit on that point again. Like they're not secretly the kryptonite for the Pistons or something. They're a good team. They'll be a tough out if they make it to the playoffs, but you know what? They got to make it too. And that's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you saw early on, like how Charlotte would want to beat any team, but definitely the Pistons is just getting a ton of offense and hoping the threes go down at a rate where it's tough to keep up. I mean, it's a decent game plan for the Pistons or really any team, but I think, as we all know, the game slowed down a bit in the playoffs. The Pistons are much more of the defensive team, even though Charlotte's defense, like, yeah, they have LaMelo Ball. They have some players that definitely aren't known for their defense, but as a whole, they're not the worst defensive team out there. They're actually pretty okay. And yeah, just back to the 60 wins point. I mean, it's just one game against the Pacers away, which is crazy to think about. And I think it will mean something. I mean, it has to, after you won just 14 games and lost 68 2 seasons ago. A lot's changed since then, but just that like 5-year stretch of your best season was 23 wins, and now you already clinched the top seed in the East. You have a chance to win 60 games. I think it will mean something, but I know like Jalen Duren's been asked about it in the post-game interviews, and a lot of the players have been asked about it. They give the common answer that they're playing for more, which they are. So, I mean, if they lose to the Pacers, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world, and we should hang our heads that they didn't become a 60-win team, because they did a lot more than anyone thought they were going to, and it seems like they have a true shot to go super far in the playoffs, which we would have thought they should have. I think the consensus goal heading into the season was to win a postseason series, and now it seems like you skip that step and hopefully can contend for a title. Obviously, anything can happen in the playoffs, but I think the team should definitely, especially when you have a short break with the play-in tournament, you should take a brief moment to think about like all that this core group has accomplished before the real basketball comes into play later in the week.
You know what? Let's talk about that play-in game here for a second, or at least I should say the play-in tournament, because it's still very much up in the air. You got the Heat and the Hornets. They're locked in there at the 9 and 10 in some order. And at this point, it just matters who's playing at home, who's playing on the road, right? So who kind of cares there? It'll probably be the Hornets sitting at the 9. I think they're a better team than the Heat, but we'll see. The Heat have got to win the other night, so who knows, right? They're not bad, and you got Eric Spoelstra. But it's really that 7-8 that game's going to be really interesting. So right now you got the Raptors, the Magic, and the 76ers. All of those teams could, in theory, be either the 7 or the 8 seed. The Raptors and the Magic, they're essentially tied right now at 6. But the Raptors play the Nets and the Magic play the Celtics. So that's, unless the Celtics are going to phone it in here, that looks like a good sign for the Raptors, right? The 76ers, they play the Bucks. I'm not really certain what their tiebreaker scenario is with the Magic, because head-to-head, they're 2-2. So I don't know how that one's going to break out. But needless to say, there's still a lot of variability here on how that seeding could shape out. And I think that seeding is actually really important for Detroit, because at least from my perspective, I'm curious to hear yours. It matters who I would expect to see in that 8th seed after the tournament wraps up, depending on who's actually playing in that 7 or 8 game. So what are your thoughts right now, just looking at this play-in tournament and how the the seeding first could shake out, kind of what you're expecting there before we go into the Pistons relevancy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most likely outcome is just with what you went through the matchups. Like, none of the Raptors, Magic, or Sixers are playing teams that have anything to play for. I mean, Orlando's playing Boston, but Boston's locked into the 2 seed, so they'll probably be resting a lot of their guys, especially Jason Tatum. So I think that leaves the most likely outcome as Toronto getting the 6th seed if they beat Brooklyn. So that would make the 7-8 game Orlando and Philly. And that's what it would be if both of those teams, or I guess I should say all 3 of those teams, take care of business and win their last game. So, I mean, if that's what it is, we talked a lot last week about that group of teams and even looping in Charlotte, Miami, who our preferred, I guess, opponent would be of that cluster. I think Charlotte was the one that we all wanted to hopefully stay away from if we could. And Toronto was the one of that group that we look toward as not necessarily an easy out, but maybe just the Pistons talent level or matchup helps them in that series. But if things go chalk, I guess, to use a March Madness term, the Pistons wouldn't see Toronto, and it would be one of Orlando, Philly, and then whoever wins that Hornets Heat game. I don't know, right? I think this is going completely against what I said last week, but I think it would be hard for those 7-8 teams to win 2 or lose 2 games in a row. So that would make it either the Magic or the Sixers. And I mean, I don't love it, but like, I don't know. I think I just see all these teams that the Pistons could possibly play in like a similar stratosphere. Obviously, if it is the Sixers, and who knows what's going to go on with Embiid and his health, like I think the Pistons should beat all of them, but I don't think they're going to get an easy out by any means, even though they should win the series pretty easily.
Yeah, it's just for me, like I'm looking at the that 7-8 game, and assuming that it's the Sixers, right, that are going to be playing in one of those positions in that game. So if you're looking at Sixers Magic, I wouldn't put it past the Sixers getting a win in that game. I feel like with the guard talent that they have, Paul George has been playing really well. Like they kind of match up pretty well there against Orlando, especially with Orlando's defense not being what it was in the past couple of years. But if it's Sixers Raptors, I kind of feel better about Toronto in that matchup, which then of course makes it interesting moving on into that 9-10 game. Like, is there any chance you think the Heat actually win that
against Charlotte?
Yeah.
I mean, I think so. Like they cooled off 100%, but they went through a stretch where they were playing good basketball fairly recently. And I'm trying to look up quickly. So Miami is actually out in front 3-1 against the Hornets in their season series. And their most recent game was in March on St. Patrick's Day, where Charlotte won that one by a lot, but the Heat won the previous 3 matchups. The first 2 were at the start of the season when Charlotte was struggling a lot. But I mean, yeah, I think like I wouldn't, if I was a betting man, I wouldn't bet that the Heat would win, but they could, like what you said last week, Eric Spoelstra and all his experience, and he still has a pretty darn good roster. Like I wouldn't put it past them to win that game and then be 1 game away from finding themselves in a first round series against the Pistons. And yeah, like YouTube user said, Bam Adebayo can drop 83 points at any time.
The first thing you were going to say was probably more accurate. He could definitely drop 38 points
Yeah.
at any time if we switch it. But you know that he did get 83. My thing with the Heat and Hornets is just, I think that's more of a coin toss game than it's going to get expected to be. Like the Heat pose some trouble for Charlotte. They are a very good defensive team when they want to be. I don't think that Diabate is really able to handle a Bam Adebayo all that well. The Heat have more size out on the perimeter, and their guards are pretty solid as well. Like they can keep up with the shooting too. They've been playing fast. I think that they're tough. I really do. And again, I'll just keep going back to what I said last week. In a winner go home game, I wouldn't want to be playing Eric Spoelstra. So I could see that going either way. I will say, though, I think that if the Heat win, then they're going to win the second game, whoever they play against. Whereas if the Hornets win, that looks more like the expected outcome. And I could see the Hornets, like Magic, being a little bit of a toss-up if the Magic could rediscover their defense. Same thing with Hornets Raptors. I think that those would be more fun games to watch, frankly. But at the same token, if the Heat pull off an upset there in that first game, it just kind of feels like at that point they're just going to roll. I don't know. I can't explain it better than that. That's just my gut on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to win 2 games in a row to keep your season alive than like if you're any team. But if it is any of those teams, like the Heat have the experience, their roster looks a lot different than what it once was when they had their best days and contending and making runs to the finals and everything like that. But yeah, the Hornets haven't played postseason basketball. Like none of their core has experienced that. And I think it'll be tough just to win 2 of those games in a row just to keep your season alive. And I mean, it's just like if the Hornets didn't have the start that they did, it would be a lot of a different story right now. I think you would see them in the playoffs, whether it was through the play-in or just qualifying outright. But yeah, when you start, I think they were 6-21 at one point. It's really tough to dig yourselves out of that. And I think they're a talented group. I think they should take a step next year, and they might make it to the playoffs this year, but it'll just be really tough for them to do so, especially when you have to get through, like you said, a team that's coached by probably the most experienced coach in the league other than Steve Kerr, now that Greg Popovich is in the front office.
Yeah, and like you said, the Heat have some guys. I think that's probably what it is. Like when you mentioned that the Heat have some guys that have been there, done that before, I think that that's kind of where I'm getting that gut feeling from. Because like Bam was on that bubble team that made the run with Jimmy Butler, and they were like a 7 seed or something like that year. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's just the bias, the history bias, right? Like the Heat they've done stuff like this before, where everyone writes them off, and then all of a sudden Eric Spoelstra sneaks out a series or something. You go, what the heck happened there, right? They've done it. I wouldn't put it past them to do it again. Like I wouldn't even love, honestly, the Heat playing Detroit. Not that like I'm not afraid of any of these teams, but I mean I'd probably rather see Toronto than Miami. As weird as that is to say, what the records are as they are. But yeah, any final thoughts here on the play-in and how this might shake out for the Pistons?
Just I think no matter who it is, the Pistons have proven that they can really beat any team in the league. So I think it's fair to be a little nervous, I guess, just because we haven't seen this team win a playoff series yet. And they're overperforming expectations, and we'll see what it nets out to. But I truly believe that the Pistons are more talented than any team they could see in the first round, and most of the teams just overall in the Eastern Conference. Like I think they could beat any team in the Eastern Conference. It's a different story over a 7-game series, and we'll see what happens. But the Pistons are in the best position to come out of the East. We'll see if that's the case. And like Jalen Duren said, the East runs through Detroit, which is crazy to think about. Like who would have thought that was going to happen in October when we were getting ready for this season.
All right, last thing, because I actually missed this. So this was Pistons fan 11 in the live chat. Who is the toughest opponent for the Pistons now? Is it the Hornets, the Magic, or somebody else? Are you sticking with Hornets here? Do you want to make a pitch maybe for Orlando or maybe for, I guess we've been talking Miami could be them, or are we just going to stay true with Charlotte?
I think I'll stay true with Charlotte for now. Yeah, I think it's them for me just because when they've been at their best this season, I mean, they have debatably the best shooter in the NBA that is not named Steph Curry, I guess, and Con Knipple, and the rest of their core, like LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, have had a good season, and you can loop Miles Bridges into that. And I also think they're fairly deep, like not as deep as the Pistons, but they've had some great contributions from guys on the bench, and Musa Diabate has been awesome for them as a starting big. But I think the only way that they could beat the Pistons is simply they're making threes at a rate that the Pistons can't keep up with. And I think the Pistons defense could find a way to work around that. Like, I don't think the Pistons would sweep them, but I think the Pistons could finish. Like, if that ends up being the series, I think my prediction would be Pistons in 5, which I guess says something if that's the team I least want to play in the first round.
Yeah, I'm going to echo everything you just said. I mean, you look at the last 2/3, right, of this season. The Hornets have been probably a top 5 or a top 6 team in the Eastern Conference. They've been really, really solid. I look at them kind of as like 80% of the Atlanta Hawks right now, and the Atlanta Hawks have been one of the best teams in the league after the All-Star break. They've just been really hot. So yeah, I mean, like I don't necessarily want to see Charlotte. They're a good team. They're going to be a tough out. I agree with you though that I think that the Pistons are still at the end of the day more talented, and we've seen that already this season. Charlotte can put up a good fight. I just don't think that they can do so to swing a 7-game series. And yeah, like Michael Dompier says, I just don't think that they can handle the physicality. Like he says he doesn't think that they can handle Duren and Stewart. I just don't think in general they can handle the way that Detroit plays. They force the Hornets into being uncomfortable, and their whole offense is predicated on not being uncomfortable. So yeah, I mean, I'd see that being a 5 or 6 game series, and then it kind of moves on. The second round, though, is where it's going to really be interesting to me, because if this 4-5 matchup of Cleveland Atlanta holds, I kind of want to take the Hawks. I'll be honest with you. They've been good.
Yeah, I'd probably rather play the Hawks, who are in a similar, like the Hawks, their roster is probably fully turned over by now, but like when they made a run to the Eastern Conference Finals, like most of those guys, if not all of them, are not on the team anymore. So I think like the Pistons would be more experienced than them, which is crazy to say. And I mean, that's not everything in a postseason series when you're talking about 2 young teams, but when you're comparing it to playing the likes of Donovan Mitchell and James Harden mainly, I think like the Pistons don't have scorers in that same ilk. Like Cade Cunningham is up there definitely, and Jalen Duren has made a name for himself this year, but Mitchell and Harden are tough to keep up with for any team. I think the Pistons would be able to find a way to minimize that, and obviously you loop in the fact that JB Bickerstaff coached them not too long ago. We'll see what he comes up with. And I think Atlanta would be tough too. I think either way, if that's what it turns out to be, and the Pistons make it out and they play either one of those teams, I think that would be at least a 6-game series. Probably I think take the Pistons in both of those, but I would like their chances against Atlanta even more, even though Atlanta's been so awesome after the All-Star break.
This is just going to be, I guess, 2 episodes in a row of somewhat hot takes from me, because honestly, I think Atlanta's a better team than Cleveland is. I do. They've been
Yeah.
one of the best defenses in the NBA over this stretch since the All-Star break, and they were playing well before that too. They have a guy who was getting Defensive Player of the Year consideration in Dyson Daniels. He's fantastic. Their offense has been great and driven by some fantastic guard play too by Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's really taken a leap forward. I understand the big names that Cleveland has. I get why they did what they did at the deadline to bring in a James Harden. But I just, at the same time, I think you look at how the team is constructed and then how each of these teams have been performing. Atlanta's offense has been better. They shoot a better percentage from three, if I remember correctly. They've been a better defense despite not having a Jared Allen. They've got it's just they're playing undersized a little bit with Onyeka Okongwu, who I think has been really fantastic. But still, honest to goodness, I think that they are a better basketball team than the Cleveland Cavaliers. And if that's the way that if the standings hold right now, I would kind of expect them to win that series. I would genuinely expect them to maybe pull that out in 6 games. And I'll say it here. I'll reserve the right to change my mind. I would be more afraid of the Hawks in round 2 than I would the Cavs. I really would.
I totally misunderstood you. I thought you were saying you'd rather play the Cavs. So I guess I'm happy. I
would rather play the Cavs. Seriously, I would.
Right. Yeah. So no, I agree. And I'm trying to look up 3-point. Yeah. So the Hawks shoot 37, just above 37% from 3 as a unit. And the Cavs are 35.9%. So almost a full.
And the Hawks are a better defense. And they can score in the paint really well. And they're really versatile. And they're deep. I'm scared of the Hawks, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, for as good of a defender he's been great offensively as the Hawks have had this like hot stretch, and CJ McCollum has been good since they brought him in the Trae Young trade. So yeah, they are deep. I think both of those teams would make a good matchup, and Atlanta would definitely be a tough series. I think just personally, I lean a little bit more to just the like scoring power of Donovan Mitchell and Harden. But yeah, like we saw what the Hawks did to the Pistons and making offense hard to come by in some of their games this year. And you're definitely going to see more of that in the playoffs. So yeah, maybe the Pistons offensively would have an easier time with the Cavs, but I don't know. I still think they could beat either. And I guess a little bit similar to what I was saying about the Charlotte series in terms of Charlotte's plan would just be to make enough threes for the Pistons not to be able to keep up with them. I think that would have to be Cleveland's plan too, just running everything through Mitchell and Harden and getting out to big leads that are hard for the Pistons to shake back. So that scares me a little bit. But yeah, the Hawks are definitely like they're the hottest team in the NBA. If it's not the Pistons and the Hornets have cooled off a bit too. So neither of those are fun matchups. So maybe the Raptors get into the 5th seed and shock the Cavs, even though that's not a likely outcome.
That I would not see happening. But look, to all the Cavs fans that I'm sure listen to this show, be afraid. Right? I do not see another team in the Eastern Conference that has a better foil to throw at Donovan Mitchell and James Harden than Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels. They got to run that offense to those two guys. I don't know how well that's going to look. All right, Pistons Fans 11 does throw up that the Pistons locked up that 21st pick in the draft. That is true. So why don't we get to, this was kind of a fun one here. Where to go? Here we go. This is from ZMS0723. Do you want the Knicks or the Cavs to be the 4th seed? Obviously, this has now been settled, so it is the Cavs sitting at the 4th seed and the Knicks sitting at the 3 seed. But we've got another comment as well here in the live chat from Pistons Fan 11 asking about a Pistons-Knicks rematch. So, with the way that the bracket here is shaken out of the top 4, the Pistons would have to see the Knicks in the conference finals. Is that a bummer at all to you? Were you really hoping to get the Knicks earlier on than that? And now, I mean, I think we can just say it's straight up unlikely to see the Knicks in the playoffs this year. Like, is that a real bummer to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is unlikely because both teams would have to win 2 playoff series before they see each other, which, I mean, it could happen. The Knicks would have to get through Boston. The Pistons would have to get through Cleveland or Atlanta, presumably. I mean, I'd like to play the Knicks again, just based like I think playoff basketball, like that matchup would definitely be in the national spotlight. I think the Pistons will be there already with one of the league's best young players and Cade Cunningham, and just couple that with the Knicks and all that. It would be the top series at that time, even though we won't see it until late now. It's not a huge bummer for me. I think I would like to get revenge, I guess. I think that would bring maybe a little bit extra juice to this team, but I don't know if they need any more juice, honestly. I think they have it and they're still hungry, trying to prove themselves, trying to win a playoff series for the first time and go far. So yeah, I mean, it is a little bit of a bummer when you think about how last year ended, but I think no matter how you get to the Eastern Conference Finals, like no matter who you play, that's going to be a great series. And if the Pistons get there and if it's not New York, the most likely other team is Boston. I think that would be a great series. So yeah, I mean, a little bit of a bummer, but I'm not losing any sleep over it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, like, it would have been fun if the Knicks somehow fell down to that fourth seed and you can see them in the second round. That'd be a good rematch, good storylines. Like you said, it'd be a fun series. But ultimately, I think the odds are pretty low. They'd have to get through Boston. And I know that they were originally constructed, they being the Knicks, they were originally constructed to try to take down Boston. They're so heavily invested in the wing room. But I can't see it the way Boston's been playing and the way the Knicks have looked a little bit disjointed and disconnected here this season. It always could come together for them, right? The playoffs are a crucible, brings players together, and you could find some new chemistry there. Definitely could happen. Wouldn't want to rule it out. They're supremely talented, the Knicks are, so it could happen. I wouldn't bet on it unless you get a really wild upset like the Magic knock out the Celtics or something like that. Like maybe the 76ers get that 7 seed and Embiid plays the whole series. Like, okay, maybe now maybe now we're going to take the Knicks. I'm really just struggling to see anything other than a Pistons Boston Eastern Conference Finals. And hey, you know what? On that, it kind of gets us to this question here from He Wizard in the DBB comments. But what would constitute a successful 25-26 Pistons season for you? I mean, do you need to see that to call this year a success now based on where they are, the Pistons getting to the conference finals?
I mean, that it's a really tough question just because of, I mean, if the like I said earlier, if the Pistons would win one playoff series heading into this year, I would have took that any day of the week, would have called it a success. And I think I'm trying to think about the worst case scenario for me that would still deem the season successful, because to a degree, if you go and beat the Pacers and you win 60 games in the regular season, it's not an unsuccessful season. Like, you won your division, even though divisions don't matter. You clinch the number 1 seed in the conference. You have home court through the playoffs. But just who this team is now, it would definitely be a huge disappointment if you lose in the first round, even if you lose in the second round to a degree. I mean, I think the furthest the Pistons could go for me to be like, what's going on a little bit, is maybe like win the first round series and get swept by the Cavs or the Hawks, but I don't think that's going to happen. And it's just hard to win in the playoffs. So if you don't get to the Eastern Conference Finals this year, yeah, it would be a bummer, but I don't think I could just take that and say that this season hasn't been successful, because it's been extremely successful to this point.
That last point was pretty much what I was going to say, which is 59 or 60 wins in a season is a success. It is. I mean, this year has been so far above and beyond what I think anybody reasonably could have expected out of Detroit, where I do think it would be, even if by some terrible luck they get knocked out of the first round, I still think it would be a stretch to say this was not a successful year of Detroit basketball. It would suck, right? And I would not be happy if that were to take place. I think, me personally, the only way I'm going to be happy with this season, no matter what, is if they get out of the first round and they're competitive in the second, just like you said. But even on that note, right, like even if that horrible outcome comes to pass and they're bounced in the first, I mean, you got Cade, who was in MVP conversations. They rattled off 59 or 60 wins 2 seasons after they lost 60 games and a record-setting year for the team in all of the wrong ways. You got Jalen Duren, who established himself as the second star that you're now going to be willing to pay. Ron Holland takes a step. Asar Thompson takes a step in the back half. Like, this team's answered so many questions this year. I just think it would be a little reductive to call this team not successful if it just doesn't really go their way in the playoffs. You need to make changes, right? You need to make adjustments, but it'd still be a successful year. All that said, I want to bring up a team that I think this group gets compared to quite a bit, and that would be the 2014-2015 Atlanta Hawks. So that was that team of Al Horford, Paul Millsap, you had Kyle Korver, Jeff Teague. Like, they were a great regular season team. And they ended up getting bounced in the playoffs. So they've kind of gone down in history as this team that, yeah, they went 60-22, but they actually weren't as good as that record. Here's what I'll say about them. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. And yeah, they lost to the Cavs and LeBron James, and they were swept. But if that's what the Pistons do this year, if they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and they get swept by Boston, that's worthy of the 60 wins, is I guess what I'm trying to say. So I think that's like the not quite the ultimate success. The ultimate success is naturally going on and winning a championship. And yeah, Pistons fan 11 brings up a good point. That team did not have a Cade Cunningham. They didn't. The best player in my book would have been Al Horford that year, and he's more of a connective piece than anything else, even back then. So, they're not the same team. They could certainly go further than that Hawks team did. I'm just saying in terms of, if they just do what that team did that year, if they make it to the conference finals, they get swept by Boston because Jason Tatum plays like an MVP. Hey, they justified the 60 wins. They were a great team. They'll come back next year and hopefully be just as good, if not even better, and more prepared for the playoffs. So I think that's like my goal for this team, getting to the conference finals and seeing what happens from there. But this has been a success this year. It has. It just has.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, and even if they weren't at the top of the East and they haven't won this many games, I think just all in all, you have to be excited about the future, because they are built to keep doing this year in and year out. If it continues this way, is another story. You have Indiana, who's getting Halliburton back, and Boston will have a full season of Jason Tatum. So a lot could go, but I think overall the Pistons prove that they can be, and they pretty much already are, one of the most talented teams, at least in the Eastern Conference, if not in the entire NBA. You have a superstar, you have an all-star big man, and you have a supporting cast with kind of like Isaiah Stewart is an elite rim protector. Asar Thompson is an elite defender. You have a bunch of guys that are elite at their, like, a specific skill. And I think overall, Trajan Langdon has a blueprint of what this roster needs to be successful because he's done it already. So overall, I just think you you have to be happy with like what this team did this season. I mean, if we're a year from now and we're in a situation like the Knicks, who got rid of their coach, kept things mostly the same, and like we just talked about, they probably like it's not likely that they're going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. They very well could, but if you regress, then you have to reevaluate things. And I think the Pistons are still on a like huge trajectory of upward movement, and you have to prove that you can do it in the postseason. And they had an opportunity last year. It had some impressive wins, made things interesting. And yeah, the next step is winning a playoff series and making a run, which we all think they can do. So I think you just have to be happy with where they are, and we'll reassess things once the playoffs are all said and done. But it only seems to be on the up and up. Like there are no signs that are pointing towards this team is going to take a step back, even though it's hard to win 59 or 60 games 2 years in a row.
So let's get in more detail here about the playoffs. We got a couple of questions. We had one from Jacob Ball, who also gave some well wishes to the growing families for Blake and I. So appreciate you, man. But he says, big question: how many players do you think are in the playoff rotation? So who actually makes the playoff rotation? And then we have another one here, getting to that same idea, from Michael Dampier, saying playoff minutes per player are hard to predict. Is Tobias Harris going to be getting 35 minutes, 25 minutes? Isaiah Stewart, 16 minutes, 30 minutes, so on. So let's try to piece together an idea of how this playoff rotation could look. Right now, the Pistons are basically playing 11 guys on a nightly basis. You have Cade, JD, Tobias Harris, Duncan Robinson, Asar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, Kevin Huerter, Danis Jenkins, Ron Holland, Karis LeVert, Javonte Green, and you got Paul Reed kind of being that little splash at the end if they need it and guys are getting in foul trouble. So do you see that 11-man rotation maintaining into the playoffs? If so, does your answer change if it's round 1 versus round 2 versus round 3? And then if not, who do you think is kind of getting the boot, so to speak, when it comes to this rotation?
It's hard because you can make an argument for any player who is in the rotation to keep their spot and get a decent amount of minutes in the playoffs. But I think you have to shorten it a bit just because of how deep and how talented this team is. I don't think you have to shorten it too much. Where my immediate gut reaction was maybe a 9-man rotation, and you can probably just play Isaiah Stewart as your backup big and have Paul Reed there in case Duran or Stu gets into early foul trouble. And then other than that, like my only other candidates, I guess, for being out of the rotation would be Karis LeVert or Kevin Huerter, and they've both. It took a little while longer for Huerter to get into the rotation and come on, but he provides that shooting off the bench. Karis has been up and down. I'm sure a lot of fans are maybe hoping that he's not in the rotation, but he's been good at times. So I think I wouldn't be shocked if he's still in the rotation. And the only reason I point out those two is you're definitely not taking minutes away from Isaiah Stewart. And do you really want to cut out Ron Holland, Javonte Green, or Danis Jenkins from the rotation? I mean, maybe you can make an argument about Holland, but this guy who's like a spark plug off the bench, someone brought it up in the chat earlier. He's having an incredible stretch of shooting the ball, which we'll see if that continues. But you're going to have to find minutes for Ron Holland. And Danis Jenkins kept things afloat while Cade Cunningham was out. He's been good all year. I think you still need to have him in there. That's not really up for debate for me. And then, yeah, you might see Tobias Harris's minutes go all of the starting group, their minutes go up a bit, but I don't think it will be too drastic just because of how deep this team is. And like, you're going to want Isaiah Stewart to play probably more minutes. So that just, it all equals out at that point. So initially I'm sort of thinking a 9-man. If I had to guess, I would pull Paul Reed and let's say Kevin Huerter out of the rotation, but I think it would be either Kevin Huerter or Karras at that point.
Here's my pitch to you, Blake. I think that at least for round one, these 11 guys are going to play. I think the way it'll work, you might see a little bit of a shift in how the minutes are distributed. I could definitely see JB having basically all of these guys getting first half minutes, and then in the second half, just leaning on who's hot, right? Kind of going a little bit by ear in that way. Like I think it was Pistons fan 11 brought up, maybe just playing it by ear, seeing who's hot. That's kind of where I'm at. And I actually think this could play to Detroit's advantage. They are more talented. They should be able to pull out a win in that first round series. If you can do that while still keeping guys like Cade and Duren and Asar at a more managed minute load, they're going to be a little bit fresher when it comes to round two, and hopefully when it comes to round three as well. So I kind of weirdly, I kind of think it's in this team's advantage to lean into the depth. You've got 11 guys that have proven they are worthy of minutes, in my opinion. I know that fans aren't all that excited with Karis LeVert, but he is a good defender. He can handle the basketball. He and Kevin Huerter have played well together so far. Like I don't think that you just want to throw him out entirely. He's not only playing because he's JB's guy. Like he has brought some value, even though the offensive production has been very streaky. I will absolutely grant you. Like he's probably the 10th guy to me, or the 11th guy in the rotation to me. So I get it. But if they can maintain this depth at least through one round, don't you think that would be really, really helpful for a guy like Cade Cunningham, who in the past has had some conditioning concerns? For a guy like Jalen Duren, who in the past has had some conditioning concerns? Ron Holland, too, being a second-year player. Asar Thompson has never played close to 30. I don't think he has played close to 30 minutes per game in a season, but the past two, he's been far closer to 22 to 26 than he has been up to 30, right? Like, if you could kind of save the legs a little bit, that could be huge.
I feel like almost, and like I went into this, I feel like you just assume that all teams shorten their rotation in the playoffs. So I need to do some digging on this, but do you remember a team that has played like more than a 10-man rotation in the playoffs of recent memory? Because I can't off the top of my head, which is why
for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, that's why I like default to the rotation is going to be shortened somehow. And maybe it is just Paul Reed isn't quote unquote in the rotation, but he could still play a bit, especially if you see foul trouble or want to save Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart. And like if the lead gets up to a certain point or whatever it might be. So like that's the only reason I'm sort of like the rotation is interesting to me. But I mean, yeah, like okay, Michael Dompier says Indiana last season, and yeah, I do remember that they had like a really good bench in the playoffs. And yeah, Pistons fan 11 brings up you don't need to change the winning formula, which I totally agree with. Yeah, I just like struggle to remember teams that haven't made some sort of adjustment going into the playoffs, but totally agree with the point of like you've won potentially 60 games, knock on wood at this point with what you're currently doing. So why not continue it? So we'll see. I think the game 1, game 2 of the Pistons first round series will obviously tell us a lot.
So Indiana's a really good call. Actually, last year they played, I'm looking at it now. They had 10 guys play 20 or more playoff games. They ended up dropping it down quite low, obviously, when they got to the finals. But you could kind of see precipitously players fall off in terms of the games that they really appeared in. We'll throw out Johnny Furphy and James Johnson because they never played more than like 3 minutes in a game. But you did have 12 guys getting more than 7. Tony Bradley played in 11 games. Jarris Walker in 12, and then it's Thomas Bryant at 20. You've got a nice little crew of Ben Shepherd and Matherin there at 21 and 22. And then it's your 7 core guys playing all 23 of the playoff games they were in. So yeah, I could definitely see, I think that's a great call. I think the Pacers are a great call. That would be how I would run it if it were me. I'm hoping naturally that JB kind of takes that same approach. But to your point, this is rare. Like OKC, to my knowledge, doesn't even really do this. They start to parse it down as well, unless they get foul trouble, which any team's going to adjust and do. So I think that this allows you to be a little bit more flexible. I think it allows you to save some guys' legs. And with the way that the Pistons play, the style that they play, how aggressive and how kind of frantic they play defensively, I think it would be pretty helpful to be able to come in waves. You know what I mean? Without needing to worry too much about conditioning and endurance. But let's see. Talking about JB Bickerstaff here, actually, because we're now on the rotation. So nationally speaking, JB Bickerstaff has been criticized for his playoff rotations before. So this is from the Race to the Bag in the DBB comments, but says JB Bickerstaff has been criticized for his inability to adjust his coaching in the playoffs, which is a different game than the regular season. So how concerned are you about Bickerstaff's ability to coach in the playoffs?
I mean, I know that this was like a big thing in his previous tenure, but just thinking of the Pistons' last postseason series, there are some things that could have been done differently overall, and maybe it would have made the series turn out a little bit differently. But I think JB has just done a phenomenal job since he's got to Detroit. And I always thought he was a solid coach when he was with Cleveland and when he was with Memphis. I think the point and the question certainly has credence to it, because overall he's 9-19 in the playoffs as a head coach. I believe, he just has won one series, which was that one series with the Cavs before they parted ways. So I think it's a valid point and something to monitor, but maybe he's learned from it. I don't think, I get some coaches are notorious for being stuck in their ways, none more than Tom Thibodeau, and that's probably why the Knicks went a different way. But JB doesn't strike me as one of those guys. I think he will do what he can to just go out and win, and if certain adjustments have to be made to give your team the best chance to win, I think he'll make those. I think we've seen it to a certain degree this week or this season. And sort of what we were talking about with the rotation, if he doesn't mix things up compared to what we're doing in the regular season, that's fine as long as it still works. But if it doesn't work, you should definitely make some changes. And if it's an early exit, especially in a non-competitive series, then I think it should be more of a talking point and a discussion. But I'm just willing to give him the benefit of the doubt after last season and just as a whole after coming into Detroit and helping them increase their win total 30 games last season and now clinch the number 1 seed in the East this season later. So kind of a cop-out answer for sure, but I'm a little bit willing to wait and see on this one.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, look, JB Bickerstaff is a younger coach, and when you're looking at his playoff history, he's really only got 2 seasons where he was the head coach of a playoff team, and both of those were in Cleveland. Obviously, the first year they get bounced in the first round. I'm looking at it right now. The second year they lose in the second round. To me, with how early this is also a narrative that tends to get thrown around when a coach gets fired from a good team. Oh, he couldn't coach in the playoffs. I don't know if that's really true. I don't know if that's really fair to JB Bickerstaff. Those teams for the Cavs were, they were solid, but you're looking at about a 50 win pace each time. It's not like these were incredibly dominant basketball teams that underperformed in the playoffs when they ended up losing in the second round. Do you know what I mean there? So like, I think it remains to be seen whether or not this narrative is actually true. I think the one thing we do know for certain is that JB Bickerstaff has a history of improving programs when he gets there, right? He did it in Memphis. He did it in Cleveland. He's done it again in Detroit. But, if you're looking at playoff success, I think Kenny Atkinson taking a 64-win team and losing in the conference semifinals is much worse than JB Bickerstaff taking a 48-win team to the conference semifinals and losing. So I think it just remains to be seen. He's still pretty young. For my book, he's one of the best coaches in the NBA right now, which is awesome that he's in Detroit for that. He should be coach of the year to me. If not, Joe Mazzulla is certainly earning of it. He's a very good coach as well. I think there are plenty of good candidates, Jenkins too. But look, I think this is an overrated narrative. I'll kind of put it that way. I'm not worried about it. And yet, so to Sports Times 2 here, it is okay to criticize a coach. I think it's a stretch to say what the Cavs did in the playoffs those 2 years comes back to the coach. I think it might have a little bit more to do with the roster that they had, in my book. But we'll see.
Yeah, I thought when Memphis let go JB, I didn't think that was fully on him. I mean, obviously it wasn't working out, but I didn't think it was on him. I think the Cleveland situation, I think this is a valid point. Like, Cleveland wanted to make a step and JB didn't get there, so they made a change. I think maybe this criticism was maybe not fully, but a little bit of an out as to why the change was made. I'm willing to wait and see. And I definitely agree with Sports Time. The challenges, I think, are a more interesting point with JB on using those. So if there's an interesting one in the playoffs, then hopefully it's not a bigger discussion, but I think that's a bigger talking point than if he's unwilling to adjust in the postseason and it comes back to bite his team. I'm with you. I think the narrative is a little bit overblown, and we just have to see what he does in Detroit after clinching the 1 seed over here this time.
All right. So we do have one more question here, but we're going to kick that over to next week's episode. The question was from Dreamscraper00. So if you are listening, Dreamscraper, we didn't miss you. We'll kick that over to next week. We'll handle it there. But we want to make sure we got all the playoff talk in that we could here this week. So I think, Blake, we'll wrap it up there. I'll kick it over to you. We can we'll close out the show.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more. We're gearing up for playoffs, but we'll sprinkle some off-season talk in there throughout. This is just the final stretch as we'll be gearing up for the postseason probably the next time we record, and then we'll have some actual basketball to talk about, and certainly we'll have some matchups to break down and everything next week. But shout out to everyone for joining. Reminder that you can call our voice line to ask a question and hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points today. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.